on Shabbos lunch, you want to have hot food, but you don't. It's the summer. You don't want to have a cholent, which is a great big heavy dish, which is something you could just put on before Shabbat and just wait, and it'll be ready by the time Shabbat Shabbos lunch comes rolling around. But you want to have some warm up, some kugels or some schnitzel or whatever it is. How do you do that on Shabbat? Can you do it on Shabbat? So the answer is yes, you can, but you've got to be careful how you're doing it. First of all, any food that has liquid in it is a problem. You can't warm up foods with liquid on Shabbat. Now, what is liquid? Liquid includes congealed gravy. So, for example, you cook a chicken and you leave it in the fridge because you want to have it the next day for Shabbos lunch. The gravy around it is going to congeal, but when it gets warmed up, it will lose its congeality and it will become liquid again. That's a problem. It's a problem to turn a solid into a liquid on Shabbat. The only thing that's not a problem is ice. It's permissible to take ice and to put it into your water or to put it into your drink on Shabbat. That's not a problem. However, to take any kind of liquid and warm it up on Shabbat is a problem. To take any kind of congealed liquid and warm it up on Shabbat so it becomes liquid again is a problem. So you can't take out soup and put it onto the hot plate in order to warm it up, even though it's already liquid, because you can't warm up liquids. You can't take any food that's got liquid in it, identifiable liquid, because obviously all food has got some liquid in it. But for example, you can't take the chicken with a congealed gravy around it and warm that up, but you can take dry food. So what is dry food? You could take schnitzels, you could take kugel, and you can warm them up. How do you warm them up on Shabbat? Well, you shouldn't put them directly down onto the hot plate, but rather you should take something and upend it. Now, normally at home we take like aluminium dishes, these disposable foil things, and turn it upside down, and then place the food on top of that, and you can place any dry food that you want. So if you want to put schnitzels, you want to warm up your challahs, whatever it is that you want to do, right? You can put them onto that rather than putting them directly onto the plate, onto the hot plate, because then there's a concern that you are going to be cooking on Shabbat.
What's the rationale of the upending?
That it shouldn't sit directly on the hot plate itself. So the truth of the matter is, if you want, you're going to say, well, why don't you just take the dish, put it down onto the hot plate the right way around, and put the thing on top. So part of the problem is it's conducting heat in a different way, which means when you upend it, the heat it's not going to get as hot as if you were to stick the thing directly with the bottom directly onto the hot plate, especially if you're talking about things like foil, aluminium. If you put this plate down, the aluminium dish down straight down in the regular way, it's going to heat up to pretty much the same heat as the hot plate itself. Whereas if you take it and you upend it, then obviously it's going up. It's got to travel a lot more in order to heat everything up. It's not getting terribly hot.
It seems like there's a lot of things that are part of the culture, part of Jewish culture, that are designed just to get around. Like, I'm not allowed to do this thing, but I can do this thing. Like, having a Shabbos goy is perfectly normal in many, many situations, but isn't that kind of, I'm not allowed to do the work, but it's okay to let someone else do the work?
Well, yes and no. It's okay to let somebody else do the work if it's forbidden to have a non-Jew do work for you on Shabbat, which is forbidden for you to do.
So the Shabbos goy turns off all the lights.
Oh, hold on a second, right? Which means like this, that in general, you can't ask a non-Jew to do something for you, which is forbidden for you to do.
But you can prescribe something in the beginning, say like at 11 o'clock, turn off the lights.
So if you've got somebody who works for you, right, and their job, they've got a pretty, their job is to take care of the house and to make sure that everything is the way that it's supposed to look. And one of the things they have to do is that they have to switch off the lights at the end of the day, and they have to, all of that stuff that they're doing it anyway. It's part of their job description. That's a lot less problematic. What is not okay is to come and say, "Could you switch this light off?" Right?
Well, and this is the type of hair splitting that I'm talking about. So
but again, it's not
result.
No, it's not hair splitting. It's a definition of halacha, which means halacha is complex, the same way that any legal system is complex, right? And what will be looked upon, you'll go to court and you'll hear somebody getting off on a technicality, right? And you'll say, oh my gosh, that's hair splitting. If ever I heard anything, but the truth is, it's not hair splitting. It's legalistics. That's what it is, and it's perfectly legal to do something like that. What we have to try to do is to try to understand things in enough depth to understand why that's okay, as opposed to why is it okay that you've got somebody who works for you who knows that once you've left the dining room on Shabbos night that he should switch off the lights, right? Why is that okay? And it's not okay for you to say, hey, could you switch off the light? That's where the definitions need to come into play, and the understanding needs to come into play as well. Just a general example, right? Is it okay to have your television come on a time switch on Shabbat? I'm not doing anything, right? It's just coming on. It's going to be preset onto the channel that I want it to be, if such a thing is possible, right?
It is.
So the answer is that on Shabbat, no, it's not. Why not? Because you may not be doing anything which is forbidden, but that's not in the spirit of the law. Now, a judge sitting in a courtroom doesn't really have the luxury.
Right.
To deal with the spirit of the law. We had a here in this class for years. There was a retired lawyer from Las Vegas, and his expertise was technicalities, getting guilty people off on technicality. He made a lot of money doing this.
So
He's a lawyer.
Okay.
He was a lawyer. He passed away, but he was he came to he funded his aliyah, and he came to live in Israel, and he started learning in yeshiva. He didn't know anything. He started learning in yeshiva and became very, very enthusiastic. And after a while, he also became rather embarrassed because he realized that everything that he was doing was really all of that legal gymnastics was really it was all pretty I don't know, immoral perhaps, unethical, whatever, but he was very sought after, and the one thing that he always kept saying, which I think is perfectly true, he never did anything that was illegal.
Right.
Which means that all of these things are technicalities which are built into the legal system. And there are technicalities which are built into every legal system, including the halacha. If a person feels bad about certain actions which might be halachically acceptable, but you just don't feel that they're right, they don't feel right to you, then don't do them. That's what I would suggest to everybody, right? Again, a little example. If somebody feels uncomfortable about having the lights going on and off with a time switch because they just feel that it's not, I'm not doing anything, but I just feel like it's not right. It's not Shabbos. So if you feel like that, then I would suggest, even though there really is no halachic problem with using a time switch at all on Shabbos, so don't use one. Retain your sensitivity to the halachic dimension of your life and the spiritual dimension of your life, even if it's going to make your life a little bit more uncomfortable. I think that to me that makes perfect sense. It really does. But the idea of being able to find various ways around problems, around prohibitions.
Rabbinic law that is like was it you that gave the example of like carpet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much of the halacha is rabbinic buffer? I
don't know. It's hard. I think it's hard to put a ratio to it. Mm-hmm. There's a significant amount. Mm-hmm. Whether I don't know, is it 50%, less, more? I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's a significant amount, and it's there to make sure that ultimately it's there to make sure that spiritually we remain intact, even if it makes our lives a little bit physically more difficult. Mm-hmm. I think that I definitely appreciate the problem, right? Which is that you look and you see, and hold on a second, if it says you can't do this, then how come you're doing it? And if it's not being done the way that you're not allowed to do it, then that's considered to be okay. Is that a technicality? Possibly. It's something. Each case probably needs to be investigated in its own merits. And it's also very conceivable that from time to time what would be acceptable for one person to do may not be acceptable for somebody else to do. just depending on the the personal situation of whatever's going on. For example, you've got somebody who's going back into a non-orthodox environment, and they're going back into a home where the parents are not orthodox, and so we've got to come up with all kinds of innovative ways of being able to get through things like Shabbat and things like Yom Tov with this person with his spiritual identity intact, right? So what might be under normal circumstances might be looked upon as something which is never done on Shabbat. So for this particular person, maybe it'll be okay for them to do it on Shabbat, because it's going to, if they do that, it's going to push off something which is considerably more problematic, right? By doing this instead of that, then you've just you've saved yourself an awful lot of spiritual damage that's being done through something else that would have to be done otherwise. Again, each case according to its has to be measured up according to the individual.
How do you judge one sin as a 2 and another sin as a 7?
For example, a rabbinic prohibition as opposed to a Torah prohibition. I'm throwing out an example which I'm just talking out the top of my head, right?
Sure.
But being told that there's a concept in the halakha of doing something b'shinui. What does b'shinui mean? That you do it in a way that's different from regular. Like something which is forbidden to do on Shabbat, but if you do it in a way that you wouldn't normally do it, then that's circumventing part of the problem, right? So, for example, putting on the light with your nose, right, as opposed to using your finger, is doing something b'shinui. If the light has to go on, right, how do I put it on? It's got to go on.
But if the light has to go on,
I was hoping you weren't going to jump onto that particular detail, because if there's a problem of what's called pikuach nefesh over here, of somebody's life is in danger, you just got to do whatever needs to be done. Forget it. Don't worry about using your fingers or using your nose, or just put the light on, make the telephone call to the emergency services, whatever it is, right? You just got to do what you need to do. But if it's something which is an emergency, but it's not absolutely pressing, which means that I could take off a moment and I could dial the telephone using my left hand instead of my right hand, which is considered one form of being a shinui, because it will slow me down, maybe slow me down by 10, 20 seconds, whatever it is. Would be a better way to do it if a person has enough time to be able to do that, and the presence of mind as well. Sometimes people get into a state and they're in a panic, and they just, whatever has to be done has to be done. So again, I mean, the idea of doing something. So you hear a person's got to do something which is forbidden to do under normal circumstances on Shabbat. Let's find out the best way to be able to do it, right? Doctors that work on Shabbat, right? What are they allowed to do and what are they not allowed to do? We spoke about this in the past, right? I'm not talking about the medical procedures right now. I'm talking about all the bureaucracy that goes around it. Does it really make any difference whether you know this person's social security number right now? No, of course it doesn't. Does it really make any difference if you know what the person's middle name is? No, of course it doesn't, right? All of this information can be put in after Shabbat. Right, so I'm allowed to write down whatever needs to be written down, which is medically related. Right, so here this person has went through this particular procedure, and this is what we did, and this is what we need to know, and this is the medication that we're given. All of that, of course, can be written down, because that's got a din of being pikuach nefesh, of danger to life. Right, all the peripheral information. So wait, put it in after Shabbat. It's not a case of, well, if I'm already allowed to do this, then let me do it. Let me just do the whole, excuse the expression, but let me go the whole hog, right? That's not. It doesn't work like that, right? In Jewish law, it doesn't work like that as well. Which is, we're going to work on trying to minimize what has to be done, and the rest of it we'll deal with at a later date.
My grandfather recently went to the hospital. He had actually a kidney infection. And a bladder infection, but in checking in, his son, my uncle, came in. Was like, these are all the medications that he has. This is everything that you need to know, and all the nurses and doctors were very appreciative of that extra information.
For sure.
By the time he actually got checked in, there were 3 medications that were missing from his chart. So my concern is, on the surface, it may not seem important to tag the social security number and the middle name. Anything left off from the chart is going to cause a problem down the road. So for me, with my minimal legal experience and my minimal medical experience,
I would say like this: when you're working here in Israel, where everybody understands, what the hospital's gone to Shabbat mode, right? So everybody understands that the busiest time of the week in the hospitals here in Jerusalem is Saturday night. Because on Saturday night they're dealing with all the people that are coming in to be treated, plus they're dealing with adding in all the information that needs to be added in from the patients that have come in over Shabbat as well, or things that have happened over Shabbat, right? And that's fine, that's great. I'm not really, what happens in America, you're right, I don't know the more information that's being given, but I would imagine that it's possible to find a non-Jewish aide, right, a nurse or a doctor or something, just to write in all the extra pieces of information that I personally don't have to write in, right? And for sure, bringing in medication and showing showing lists of what needs to be taken, all that stuff's got to be written down, because that stuff is vital.